Welcome back to the Undeserved Flavor, happy people. Come along for the ride. I got a juicy one. Probably won't be too long of a video. I just had a thought. I've been rolling around the idea of doing a video regarding hellish near-death experiences and the concept of reincarnation, since that is a pretty common subject within near-death experience testimonials. Disclaimer, this is all my opinion. All of the evidence is anecdotal. And this I have over the past, I want to say at least 2 years, and I'm not exaggerating, it's probably been more, but at least 2 years, I have been listening to a solid handful of near-death experience testimonials on a daily basis. It is one of the things that I do regularly. I listen to theologians' teachings, audio books on various topics, primarily theology or near-death experience related, but the heaviest topic that I have been, I don't want to say researching, because I'm not really like researching it, but I am like listening to testimonials, because there's a variety of sources on the interwebs and YouTube and whatnot where you can literally see thousands upon thousands of near-death experience testimonials. Now I'm talking like firsthand, like the people that actually experienced this giving their testimony. This isn't secondhand. Some of them are. Some of the like the audio books that I listen to while I'm at work, or some of the YouTube channels that interview near-death experiencers will occasionally read a written account that was submitted to them because the person wants to be anonymous. Anyway, after literally hearing thousands of near-death experience accounts, I have obviously gathered an opinion, and I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to say a conclusion. I will say an opinion, because that's all it is. There's no way to draw conclusions when all you're dealing with is anecdotal evidence. It's literally people's experiences. We can't prove or disprove these accounts, but when you have thousands upon thousands of accounts from around the world, from every background, unrelated to each other, coming back with similarities that are, there's no two NDEs that are identical. Everybody has a unique experience, but they do have a lot of close commonalities. Some of them are very unique, but they are all one-off. They're all personal to the experiencer. But like the places they claim to go, the experiences that they claim to have, they're all extremely similar in kind. So the vast majority of near-death experiences that I hear are pleasant experiences. Now, when I say pleasant, I don't mean they were free from the trauma of having to die, but I'm saying once they were on the other side, they were pleasantly surprised. And that is an understatement, because when you're in the presence of bliss that cannot be described or put into language on this side of the veil, there's no way to really fathom it. So that's all I'm going to say. But a handful, definitely, there are a handful of NDEs that have experienced what has been coined a hellish experience. Now, this is where somebody has a near-death experience, where they go into, their body dies, whether it's clinically or not. The most of them are clinical. Most people that come back and tell their story have been clinically dead, verified medically. Not everybody, but for the most part, it's medically verified that they were gone. Many of them wake up in a freaking morgue with a toe tag and scare the crap out of people around them. They're like long past the the point of being revived, and there's no explanation other than just supernatural intervention as to why they woke back up. But I'm talking about all near-death experiencers, not just the hellish ones. So anyway, I wanted to talk about the hellish experiences and reincarnation, because the two things, or the main thing these two types of near-death experiences have in common from my personal perspective is that, to me, it seems like, okay, let me pause there and say that I have gathered that there are degrees of near-death experiences. For example, and I can't really explain it any other way than to say some people go, quote unquote, further into the experience. They're farther from this life before they come back. And some people don't go very far, quote unquote, from this side of the veil. They have an experience, maybe that you could call it an in-between or almost there. I don't know. There's no real way to put it into words, because there's no distance. We are all one with the cosmos, and there's no distance. But there definitely can be a period of transition when your consciousness is moving from one dimension to another, because that's what's happening. You're going from one dimension to another, where you're leaving, your consciousness is leaving this dimension and it's entering another dimension. So are there different dimensions of consciousness, like more than two? I don't know. I would think if there's two, there's probably more. But so anyway, all that said, my personal opinion, and that's all it is, like I said, I'm not trying to tell you what it is. I'm telling you what I have gathered based on hearing thousands of testimonials, because I don't cherry pick the stories that I listen to, because I'm a Christian Universalist and I only want to hear good stories, and I don't believe in hell, so I can't listen to the hell ones. No, I want to listen to everything, and I want to test and question everything. That's how I got where I got, is because I've been testing and questioning everything, and I have ended up here because I've tested and questioned everything, and I'm wading through the BS that is everywhere, especially in religion. Anyway, so I personally believe, so I'm going to back up here. Let me get to my point. We're getting there. Thanks for bearing with me. The thing that hellish NDEs and reincarnation have in common, in my opinion, is that I believe they are not, quote unquote, fully awake experiences, fully awake on the other side. I think they are somewhere in between. Well, no, I take that back. Never mind. Strike that. I think that about the hellish experiences. It seems like they go to a place that's kind of in between. They're in the darkness. They experience, a lot of them experience extremely, and what seems very real, demonic beings. They may go to a place that they understand to be hell, or call hell, because that's what they know. That's what they've known when they were on this planet. Most Christians have a schema that includes an afterlife of heaven and hell. Well, I believe that we are creators and we can create our own reality. And this is a huge fundamental belief in many spiritualities around the world, is that we can create our own reality in a spiritual experience. Now, this is not something we can understand fully, because when you do go into a real spiritual experience like this, it actually, your experience is more real than it is when you're awake on this side of the veil. So it's actually incredibly traumatizing for most people that come back after having a hellish experience, because it's not a dream. You're not in a dream-like state. You're not hallucinating. It's very different. Everybody who's had these experiences, who have also experienced various types of drugs, psychedelics and hallucinogenics and whatnot, they can tell you it is not the same. There is no comparison whatsoever between a hellish near-death experience, or a heavenly one for that matter, and a psychedelic drug trip. So you can't chalk it up to being high on, the painkillers they're giving you when you're in the hospital, or shrooms, or whatever else you can think of that can trip you out. It's not the same. Not even DMT. DMT doesn't even come close. DMT is just like any other drug that's going to warp your state of your mind. You're going to get an experience. I don't have any experience with it, but I've heard a lot of experiences of it, and I can tell you that I have heard near-death experiencers say that it is nothing like the near-death experience. Moving on. Hellish experiences, I think, are so the heavenly experiences, they all have a lot more in common with each other than do the hellish experiences and what they have in common with each other. The hellish experiences people have, generally, when they come back, their experience is so unique and so one-off, it's almost unlike any other experience completely. Whereas the heavenly experiences, they come back and they can find tons of other experiencers who are very similar to their experience. So what does this tell me? It tells me that the hellish experiences might actually be a sort of, like, I don't know, not a test, or maybe a wake-up call, or maybe a scared straight experience that you just had coming based on the life you were living. One thing I can tell you they all have in common is they all came back to tell the story. And many of them, whether they knew Jesus or God or not, have called out to Jesus while they're in this hellish experience, and immediately everything stops, and Jesus comes and literally pulls them out of it, brings them into either a heavenly experience or brings them back into their body. Explain that, evangelical. It says once you die, it's the last, you lost your shot. Why are people dying and crying out to Jesus on the other side when they're basically in hell and Jesus comes and pulls them out? All who call on the name of the Lord. Well, they called on the name of the Lord after they died, and they went to hell, and they were saved from that instant by Jesus. And literally by Jesus, like, not Buddha, not not an elephant, not a cow. Pretty much every hellish experience that I've heard of has been a more Christian experience. Now that said, I do believe most of the hellish experiences that I've heard are people that have a knowledge of Christianity before they have the experience. Whether they're a believer or accepted of Christianity is another story. A lot of them just, maybe they grew up in a Christian family, they know all about it or a lot about it, the heaven and hell concept, and they aren't a Christian themselves, but they grew up going to their church or at least knowing about it, and then dying in whatever way they die, and then having a hellish experience. Like one guy, for example, I can't believe I don't remember his name off the tip of my tongue. He's a popular guy with his hellish experience. admittedly, he was a pretty bad guy. He was not bad in like the criminal sense, but he was just a really jerk of a guy. And he definitely was not a Christian. But when he died, he remembered being a kid and his mom saying a prayer, and he was trying to think, like, what was that prayer? And I think he recalled bits and pieces of the Lord's Prayer, and he tried to say it, and he couldn't say it, and he ended up just, like, if I remember right, he just said something along the lines of, like, Jesus help or something, and then Jesus came and helped him, pulled him out of it. But anyway, so where I'm going with the hellish NDEs, I think these are all personal experiences that were not based on a literal location, a literal afterlife location. I think they're somewhere in between dimensions, having an experience that is either created by them or for them, for who knows what reason, but it always, in every single case, in every single testimony, leads to a complete change of life when they come back. They are no longer a terrible person when they come back here. So whoever created that experience for them, whether it was themselves, their higher self, if you're a Eastern spiritualist, or God, Jesus and the angels, and the council if you're a Christian, council being cloud of witnesses or whatever. Anyway, they all come back and their life is completely changed. A lot of them come back extremely traumatized at first because it was a horror like nothing you could experience here on Earth. I mean, and think of the horrors you can experience on Earth. And it's a lot of these testimonials don't hold a candle to the worst experiences you could possibly fathom here on Earth. It's because it's just so wild and otherworldly. But their life has changed, and usually for the better. For the most part, from my experience listening to these, they all become Christians in some capacity. Whether they follow a particular denomination or sect is another story. But they become Jesus followers, usually. And a lot of them become, like, preachers or pastors. Anyway, moving on. That's my thought on hellish NDEs. I think they're just like middle of the road, in between stage. You're learning a lesson of sorts to come back and kind of basically be set, be set on a new trajectory in life before this vapor of a life you have is done. Moving on to reincarnation. I hear this a lot. So a lot of Christians and non-Christians alike, let's just focus on the Christians. So a lot of Christians who were Christian going into their near-death experience, who would have never considered the idea of reincarnation, because today in modern Christianity, it is really it's not a Christian thing. Like, it's considered Eastern religion. It's considered fake, wrong to even contemplate. It's not real. And anyway, a lot of Christians come back saying they remembered past lives. They basically went there, and not only did they remember these past lives, being on the other side, being that all time exists in the eternally deep present, the eternal moment where there's no past, present, or future, everything exists all at once. It's like when they come back, they're like, they call them past lives, but at the same time they say that it feels like they relived these past lives while they were there, all at once. And they had real experiences with real families and real encounters on Earth, or in some cases, other planets, where they were other life forms. And I mean, some of them get pretty wild and out there, but I will say a lot of people that have these experiences that are Christian going into these experiences come back still Christian, but mostly they walk away from their religion. They'll stay followers of Christ, but they have a whole different perspective of who and what that is, and they now will. One of the biggest and most blatant things they'll say is, "I'm no longer religious. I am spiritual." Religion has no value whatsoever, and a lot of times it destroys marriages because they come back and they're a whole different person. And but as far as the reincarnation thing goes, my opinion of this. Now, in the early church, just a little nugget of bonus wisdom here, bonus knowledge. The early church did not feel like reincarnation was something extra biblical, as we would call it today, even though they didn't have a Bible then. They didn't think it was wrong to think of that as a possibility. They very much, a lot of Christians in the early centuries actually believed in reincarnation. Not in the karmic sense that we get in the East, where you're coming back to like fix what you did wrong in the past, or learn a lesson that you didn't learn in the past, or pay penance for what you did in the past. Like it's like if you're good karma or bad karma. Well, you're going to come back as a frog if you were a bad person, or you're going to come back as a really well-to-do person if you were good in this life. It's not like that at all. It seems like these reincarnation testimonials don't, the reincarnation experiences that they talk about, there was no relation between lives. There was no correlation between lives. There was no cause and effect between lives. A lot of them do talk about soul groups, like reincarnating with the same souls in their families. They would often switch places, like this person was my mother, now they were my sister, now they were my spouse. They come back, playing a different role. But you have these soul groups, that are almost like life partners or soulmates or whatever, not just 2 or 3, but like groups. Like in these soul groups, if you're not incarnated all at once, they're with you still, like as guides and helpers. That's what they come back talking about. And the experience that they have on the other side, while pronounced dead on this side, no brain activity or any kind of cardiovascular function whatsoever, their experience on the other side is ultra real or hyper real. It makes this reality seem like a cloudy, foggy dream. And that is one thing that virtually all near-death experiences have in common. That being on the other side is an ultra real reality. There are colors there that don't exist here. There are notes and tones that don't exist here. So basically the spectrum of color and sound that we perceive over there is vastly wider than it is here. And taking that a step further, it's not only is it not a dream state to be there, everybody who has these experiences come back and they're able for the rest of their life to remember these experiences like they just happened a minute ago. Versus if you wake up from a dream, I don't care how lucid the dream, that dream's going to fade over time. There may actually come a time where you completely forget it, or when you try to remember it, it's nothing like it was originally. And there's no really real way to prove how much of it you forgot and how much you've made up along the road of trying to continually remember it. But one thing they all have in common, these near-death experiences, is that in some of them, it's been 50 years. Some of these people are like super old, and they had the experience. I just listened to one yesterday. The guy had it in 1967, and he's just now talking about it. And it's an anomaly to him how he can remember this experience better than what he can remember having for breakfast. So much less remembering any dreams he's ever had. it stays burned into your memory in most cases. Some cases people come back remembering the experience, but literally being told by a being on the other side, you're not going to be allowed to remember everything you experienced here because it'll mess up your future in that life. So they'll come back remembering that and other things, but not everything they were allowed to see and know on that side. So getting back on track to reincarnation, my personal opinion, based on listening to thousands of reincarnation testimonials, and like I said before, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it, this is my opinion. Draw your own conclusions. Come develop your own opinions. My opinion, it's only worth anything to myself. And if you want to listen to it, take it as entertainment. And I mean, there may be some weight to my opinion because I have listened to thousands of these, and I have, I guess you could call it research. I have been researching these for the last few years, and so I mean, I have experience in the field of near-death experience research. Because other than doing like double-blind studies and this kind of stuff, like which is literally impossible, there's no other way to research near-death experiences rather than to have just simply listened to and read as many testimonials as you can possibly get your hands on. You can categorize them, you can organize them, you can revisit them, you can ask new questions, you can ask, you can come in contact with these people and ask them all a series of the exact same questions and see how they answer them. I mean, like, there's things you can do to go deeper in the research process, but ultimately, if you have good interviewers and a lot of the questions that would be necessary to be asked for a thorough interview are asked, there's no reason to go back and ask them again the same questions. So I listen to a few different interviewers regularly that are pretty thorough in not only their questioning, but also in their listening. They're allowing the person to fully talk and fully convey all of the details of their story with, like the freedom to just, no matter how long they go, whether it takes them an hour and a half, whatever, to get through it all, they're allowed to just unload it. So anyway, back to what I was saying. My opinion, based on hearing thousands of NDE accounts and reading some, I believe that because we are all one, telepathically connected, I don't believe we actually individually have had past lives or will have a future life. I do believe when you're transitioning from this state to the next, this dimension to the next, when you're transitioning from being a very isolated consciousness in appearance, like you think, like you go from only knowing isolation to being telepathically one with all of creation and all beings to ever have lived and live. You may be so connected and so deeply ingrained in your oneness with so many other different personas that exist, different consciousnesses, different beings, people, that you're actually experiencing their lives, but you didn't personally live that life. You didn't live that incarnation. But you did because you're one with them in this current state of consciousness outside of the physical, that it feels like you did because there's no separation. So you feel like you lived their life as if you were them. So that is my theory. That's my opinion on reincarnation. I don't believe we come back and go there and come back. Because like I said, now you could take it a little deeper and talk about the whole idea of parallel universes, the multiverse and all that. I haven't taken that red pill and followed the rabbit trail, rabbit hole, whatever, down that road, because honestly, you're not, as far as I am on this road, as far as I can see, I don't see any means of drawing any solid conclusions, so I don't see any purpose in going down that hole. You can drive yourself crazy and literally become a kook real quick, fast, and in a hurry by entertaining some ideas for too long. You got to be a pretty stable person to go down some of these rabbit holes. But that said, I do think it's very possible that we could be living multiple incarnations simultaneously. But then again, like I said, if I do believe we are distinct personas. I think we are, like, you are you and I am me, and we are a distinct drop in the ocean. We're not 100 drops, we're one drop. We're not omnipresent. Now, we are omnipresent on the other side of the veil, but I don't mean omnipresent in that we can essentially... So I think if you say we live in a multiverse where we have infinite incarnations, or each of us individually has infinite incarnations simultaneously, that's... I mean, you're erring on the side of calling yourself the God of the universe in doing that, because you're making yourself one and the same with the infinite. Now, honestly, at the end of the day, that may be very possible. But I'm not in a place yet where I haven't seen enough anecdotal evidence, to convince me of that one. And I don't feel the need to start, going down that rabbit hole, like I said, and contemplating. I've thought about it. I'm not saying I haven't thought about it. I'm not saying I'm avoiding considering it, because I've considered it. I know when to stop, because it's vain. It's futile. Because there are people who, I'm sure you get on YouTube, you can find all kinds of weird stuff. When I say weird, I'm not demeaning them. It's just weird, compared to what we know as normal. And what I'm talking about is like people who claim to interact with aliens on a regular basis in the astral realm, astral world. They know how to leave their body at will and travel in spirit and interact with aliens, or maybe they believe they're a star seed, or an alien plant, and they're on a mission from another galaxy to do something here, infiltrate humanity with a certain level of intelligence, or study humanity so that their species can gain something from us. I don't know. People come back from these near-death experiences talking about having lived on other planets, and having very, very vivid experiences. Like, have you ever seen the movie Contact? It came out in the late 90s. What was that actress? The same actress that I believe was in Twister. I don't know. I don't pay much attention to Hollywood, so I don't remember people's names in Hollywood too much. But, anyway, they get this message from outer space. It's a code, and basically it leads them to build this spaceship, and they don't know what it's going to do, but it's got one seat right in the center of it. And you go sit down in this big device that, who knows what it's going to do. Nobody really knows. Is it a ship? Is it a teleportation device? Is it a time travel machine? Who knows? They don't really know what it's going to do, so they're afraid to fire it up. Anyway, this lady goes in, they fire it up. She goes through a wormhole interdimensionally through space and ends up on a planet and encounters her dad, who died when she was a kid, 30 years prior, or 40 or however old she is. And she walks and talks with him on the beach of this planet, and he says, we're all here. I don't know who sent you these directions to build that thing, but, we're here. Can't wait to see you, when it's your turn. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. But anyway, so obviously this is just a movie. It's not real. It's not based on anything in reality. But there are people... I'm thinking this movie may be based on someone who actually had an experience. They just didn't come out and say they had the experience, because they'd be called a freaking kook. especially 20, 30 years ago when this was more out, like you talk about having a near-death experience, they just straight up lock you up in a psych ward. They still will do that in some cases today. Thankfully, the medical community is becoming more and more open because since CPR was developed, 50 or so years ago, more and more people are getting resuscitated. So more of these stories are, gaining in popularity. Imagine having a near-death experience in the 60s, coming back and then trying to tell your doctor you just met Jesus and want to tell everybody you met Jesus and Papa and a bunch of other relatives, and you knew what the doctor was saying and wearing and doing while you were in surgery and, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and just blowing his mind, and he looks at you like a deer in headlights, turns around and prescribes you a psychedelic or a psychotic drug, and admits you to the psych ward. It's like, so people will shut up about this stuff because they don't want to be called crazy, because what they experienced was real, and people on this side have no grid to even start thinking about this stuff. It scares the living crap out of most people, especially the people in the professional fields like doctors, because they're way too scientifically minded. They've been way too walled off to that, type of stuff. They have to maintain a level head on this plane to do their job. Anyway, way off track. So there it is. That's my opinion, in theory, on hellish NDEs. I don't believe there is an actual hell. I believe that they're going into an experience that is uniquely created for them. It's a unique spiritual encounter, a spiritual experience. I don't believe the beings that are considered demons are real ontological beings that have their own persona. I do believe they're having an experience that is almost like symbology, like the book of Revelation, how everything is metaphorical. Like when John had that experience, nothing about it was literal. That very well could have been a near-death experience, because how many times they tried to kill John? Throw him in tar, boiling tar, stone the guy, burn the guy. Like, they tried killing John the Beloved so many times they couldn't kill him, so they finally exiled him to the island of Patmos, where he then is supposedly known to have written the book of Revelation. Like, the guy obviously had an experience. He didn't just pull this stuff out of a, simple meditative trance. This guy has been somewhere and seen some things. And I think Paul too. Paul was shipwrecked and stoned and beaten. The dude had near-death experiences where he came back. And I mean, that explains a lot of the way he tells his story, and describes a lot of the things that he describes, and the way he teaches, and the way he talks about grace and everything. Like if you haven't had a near-death experience and you're not familiar with near-death experiences, you're not going to be able to have a grid for, I think, a lot of what's written in the Bible. I have to drop my trailer off here, and I have a roadblock. Dun, dun, dun. How long you guys going to be here? Anyway, I'll just keep talking. So, anyway, I think hellish experiences are just that. They are a symbolic encounter, metaphorical experience. When you go in the spirit and you leave the body, I think what is reality is relative. Yep, I gotta move. So, anyway, yeah, losing my train of thought here because I got. You see what's going on here. You see what I see. Hellish experiences, yeah. So that's it. I think they're just an experience to put the experiencer on a new trajectory of life for whatever reason. I do believe we have a purpose, and our purpose here in this life is to love and be loved. Learn to love when it's not easy. And that's literally it at the end of the day. And to learn how to relate to each other and to God and bring heaven to earth. And that is bring the love presence that is what's on the other side to this world. That's our challenge. That's our purpose. That's our calling. And reincarnation is somebody, in essence, misinterpreting the experience that they're having. And that's it. Now, I'm not being condescending or judgmental. That's just what I gather. I very well could be wrong. I was not the one there. When I eventually die and go see it for myself, I could very easily be like, oh man, I've had millions of past lives, and then realize, wow, that's pretty cool. Great, awesome. I don't care one way or the other. It doesn't make any difference for me, and it shouldn't make any difference for anybody else, whether reincarnation is real or not. I just wanted to share this video to, talk on the subject, because it doesn't really get talked about in Christian circles. And anyway, so there it is. Like I said, I may be wrong, and you may believe in reincarnation. Great. More power to you. I don't think it serves anyone any real benefit to preach it. You know what I mean? Whether it's real or not. There's more important things in life, than searching things that serve no purpose. Searching out things that serve no purpose. Now, if it's a hobby of yours and you're finding pleasure in it, great. More power to you. Go ahead. But anyway, so that's my thoughts for today. If I wasn't very clear on something, or if I left something out that you're wondering, or if you have any questions, what my thoughts are, drop it in the comments, as always. I'll get to it. Usually when you drop it in the comments, I will reply to the comment. But if it's a juicy one, I will do a video in regards to the question you put forth. Anyway, so that is all I have for you for today. The typical rigmarole of the YouTube world. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. I definitely appreciate it. And we'll see you on the flippity flip. By that I mean, I'll see you in the next video. If you have something you want me to talk about, drop it in the comments. If you want me to address something that you don't feel like I have addressed, or have addressed clearly, or you want to hear my perspective as a Christian Universalist on, that you don't feel like I've addressed thoroughly, or Christian Universalism hasn't answered for you, put it in the comments. I'll get to it. I will answer it. Go look at the comments on my other videos. I am there. Sometimes it takes me a while because for some reason I don't get notified of some comments, but for the most part, like, I'll go in and put in a bunch of comments from time to time in chunks, but I'll get to it. And if you have your own notifications turned on for YouTube, you'll get an email saying somebody replied to your comment. That's all I got for you today. Peace. Taste and see that the Lord is good.